Roxanne Ellis and Michelle Abdill met in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Roxanne was divorced and working as an obstetrics nurse. Michelle was working in the same doctor's office, and the two eventually fell in love. In 1990, they left the increasingly uneasy atmosphere of Colorado Springs, where people objected to their lesbian lifestyle. After moving to Medford, things eventually started looking up for Roxanne and Michelle. The two women started a very successful property management business and got elected to the board of their church. The Los Angeles Times reported that the women gave lectures at the schools on lesbian lifestyles and appeared on TV on behalf of local gay rights causes. According to lesbian activist Donna Redwing, Roxanne and Michelle also helped care for a couple of men who were dying of AIDS. Roxanne and Michelle slipped into a friendly network of people in the LGBT community from places like Los Angeles and San Francisco, who had found that, like much of the rest of America, they wanted a safe and comfortable place in which to grow old. Roxanne's daughter Lori had a 3-year-old daughter named Hannah. Michelle and Roxanne loved being grandparents. They were a very tight-knit family. When the couple wasn't working on selling properties or fighting for their rights, they were often spending time with Lori and Hannah. On the morning of December 4th, 1995, Lori and her mom, Roxanne, both had scheduled property showings. Lori had an appointment at 9:30, and Roxanne had one at 11. Roxanne was scheduled to meet with a 27-year-old man named Robert Acremant. When Roxanne failed to return from her showing that morning, Lori started to get increasingly nervous. Lori paged her mom multiple times but couldn't get a hold of her. Finally, around 5 p.m., Michelle received a call from Roxanne saying that her car battery had died and needed her to meet her at the duplex to help jumpstart her car. As more hours went by, Lori decided to take matters into her own hands. Lori got into her car and drove to the vacant duplex where her mom was supposed to be. As she approached the duplex, she found her mother's car. Lori begins to follow the car, honking and flashing her lights behind the vehicle. The car eventually pulls over and then abruptly speeds away. Lori got to the duplex and then found Michelle's unlocked car in the parking lot of the duplex. This is when Lori calls the police. When the police got to the duplex to investigate, they found nothing out of the ordinary. No blood, no biological evidence, no signs of struggle. Police begin to question whether the woman's disappearance had anything to do with their sexual orientation, a possible hate crime. The police wasted no time before knocking on the doors of neighbors. Quickly, the police found not one, but 2 witnesses. The first witness was a single mom who lived next door with her 15-year-old son. The woman's son said the man told him that he was going to be his next-door neighbor. Then, over the course of the next half hour, the boy heard the garage door open and close several times. He also said to have heard cars moving from the driveway as well. Police used the description given from the boy to create a composite sketch of a white adult male. Detectives began to sift through all the calls to the realty office prior to 11 that morning. There was one call that stood out from a motel nearby. The phone system at the motel was down, so staff couldn't help detectives figure out which room the call came from. Back at the duplex, detectives find a fingerprint from the inside of the garage. The print was run through a criminal database, but were unable to identify whose it was. As police were hitting a dead end, they reached out to the public for help. They released pictures of the missing women to the media, and the whole community began to help. Just 3 days after Roxanne and Michelle's disappearance, the story made national news. Police continued to do extensive searching around the clock. They followed leads, did ground and aerial searching, and conducted polygraphs of family members to see if they were involved somehow. On December 8, 1995, the bodies of Roxanne Ellis and Michelle Abdill had been found in Roxanne's truck on the other side of town. Inside the truck was filled with cardboard shipping boxes and a mattress. Both women suffered a brutal death. They had been gagged and had duct tape covering their mouths and eyes. Both women had been shot twice. 2 days after the women's bodies had been found, a new lead came into interest. Darlene Bradshaw was a single woman who just recently moved to the area from California with her 27-year-old son, Robert Acremant. She was living in close vicinity to where the pickup truck the women's bodies were found in. Robert served in the Air Force and earned a master's degree in business administration from San Francisco's Golden Gate University in half the time usually required. Later, he worked as a district operations manager at Roadway Trucking in Los Angeles. Acremant eventually left his job at Roadway Trucking to start his own software business. His company was not successful. He became frustrated by the failure of his company and his own failure to find a job and achieve financial security. Police eventually learned that Robert lost all his money to a stripper in Las Vegas named Alla Kosova. Robert and his mom were working with Roxanne to find somewhere to live in the area. Roxanne showed Robert the duplex just 2 weeks prior to her disappearance. On the morning of December 4th, 1995, Robert left the apartment and traveled to the motel where the mysterious call to the realty office was made the day the woman disappeared. The next morning, Darlene said her son packed his things and took off to LA. Police searched Darlene's home for clues. They found cardboard boxes and shipping labels consistent with what was found in the pickup truck. Police had a hard time matching the fingerprint found on the garage door to Robert, as he'd never been arrested before. A detective working on the case was able to obtain Robert's fingerprints from the state of California from a security job he had in the past. The police compared the prints to what was found on the garage door, and it was a match. Now that police had physical evidence and that Robert matched the composite sketch, police had enough evidence to issue an arrest warrant. Police began to head to California. As they were about halfway there, they received a call that Robert had been involved in a botched kidnapping robbery. Robert is now wanted in California and Oregon. He was then tracked down to a Stockton motel room and arrested on December 13, 1995. Robert confessed to the murders of Roxanne Ellis and Michelle Abdill. He also described the botched robbery attempt in California. Acremant also confessed to killing a man named Scott George of Visalia, California, on October 3, 1995, and dumping his body down a mine shaft located outside his father's ranch near Stockton. Acremant's statements about his motive have shifted over time. He has said that his intention was to rob Ellis and Abdill. Media reports said the robbery scheme was part of a plan to get enough money to win back Kosova. However, the district attorney in the case noted that some of the evidence undermines robbery as the only motive. as Acremant left the victims' purses, wallets, jewelry, cell phones, and money at the scene. When Roxanne's daughter arrived at the complex, she and Michelle's brother, Dan Abdill, spotted Michelle's unlocked vehicle at the scene, with her purse in plain view, which prompted them to call the police. As soon as he walked inside that duplex, he held her at gunpoint and duct taped her hands. Roxanne said there was no money in the property account. Robert made Roxanne believe if Michelle emptied the security deposit box, then she'd be let free. He didn't keep his word and shot both women. The murders appeared to be premeditated. He came prepared with handcuffs, plastic gloves, and weapons. At the time of their murders, Ellis and Abdill had been together for 12 years. In October 1997, Robert was sentenced to death for the murders of Michelle and Roxanne. In 2002, he received another death penalty for Scott George. In August 1996, Robert wrote a letter to his hometown newspaper, the Stockton Record, stating that he had intended to rob Ellis and Abdill, and that knowing they were lesbians made it easier to kill them. He also wrote that he had killed Scott George, who was reportedly bisexual, because he had made a pass at him. In his 3-page letter, Acremant claimed he invented the robbery motive because he feared reactions from inmates who might learn that his murders were hate crimes against bi and homosexuals. In an interview with the Stockton Record from his jail cell, Acremant said he had no problem with bisexual women, but had no compassion for lesbians, bisexuals, or gay men. On October 26, 2018, Robert J. Acremant died of natural causes at the Oregon State Penitentiary.